So, uh, today's class is going to be on cycles, right? Cycles and how to trade them. All right. So, cycles and how to trade them. Well, one of the first things to realize is that in crypto, as with all markets, there are basically four stages that a chart could be in, right? There are basically four cycles. Well, it's not really like four cycles, but four stages that make up a cycle, and it kind of repeats itself over and over again. And if you know anything about Wyckoff, you'll probably get where I'm going with this. So, and this isn't like in order of like any specific order. It's just I just had to start somewhere. This is number one is just arbitrary, right? Okay, so with cryptos specifically, one of the first cycles you're probably gonna meet if you start buying some bag as a noob is probably the dump, right? This is when a project is just going downwards. You know, it's just not. There's really no need to trade it, right? That's the sideways, which in this case is the accumulation sideways, right? There's the uptrend, and then there's the sideways, which would be the distribution sideways. So the question you have to ask yourself is, well, first thing is, you know, where are we in the cycle, and how do you trade specific cycles? So I'm just gonna run through each one and sort of, you know, tell you specifically, you know, what to do, well, not specifically what to do, but like what possible things you could do, and all like the possible ways to interact with a specific section. Well, so when a coin is dumping in crypto, most people, well, if you're a whale, there's probably a good time to start buying some because it's the most liquid. But in reality, you know, most people don't have that much money, so they don't need to do that. Two things you can do is to short or just exit the market, right? There's not much else really to do there. It's a short or exit. If it's a coin on BitMEX, right? Your big caps, your ripples, your ETCs, and ETH, your CEC, then yeah, you can short it or whatever. But most shitcoins just dump and exit. The question to ask yourself then is, right, how do you know we're in a dump, right? How do you know the pump is over? I hope that's how you spell commences. How do you know when the pump is over? Really, let's use DGB as a good coin for this example. What the fuck is DGB? Yeah. So this is actually kind of skewed. Like even though it's on a log scale, it's still pretty skewed because it's incredibly hard to sort of visually represent coins that go from 10 satoshis to 2,000. But anyways, I like to use a very simple moving average indicator to decide when the uptrend is over. Now, with this moving average, you can see like how it trades above the moving average the whole time, and then the very first time it goes below that moving average and closes below it, that was the end of the bull trend, right? And then it just started trending downwards and downwards and downwards forever. Now there are many ways to decide if a bull trend is over, or you can use multiple indicators. You can watch the whales, you can watch the volume and see when the end is near. So you can use MACD or RSI. I personally just use EMAs and SMAs because I find it to be the most useful, right? So sideways accumulation. Well, first of all, how do you know if something is sideways, right? How to recognize sideways accumulation. Well, this is actually quite simple. Let's use Doge to make the point, because it has a pretty long history. So during the December period of last year, and the January period of this year, you could see this sideways here, right? At the bottom, came down and bottomed down, went sideways. The candles were really small. There wasn't that much movement, all up or downwards. This is obvious sideways movement. But then, how do you know if it's accumulation or distribution? Well, that's where volume comes in, right? Usually during accumulation sideways, the volume bars are usually very little and mostly green, right? With the occasional giant volume spike for the lazy whale who doesn't want to take months or whatever. This is like one of the most basic ways of recognizing sideways accumulation. Another thing is, if you're a moving average sort of guy, you will notice lots of crossovers. This happens because, well, moving averages are moving averages, and when something is sideways, you're gonna notice like multiple, like it crosses over here and crosses over again and then crosses over. It just crosses over so many times until it finally happens over here. Then it doesn't really cross over again until the bull trend ends, right? So it's a very basic, simple. Yeah, thanks for showing up, guys. So yeah, it's a very basic sort of way of knowing if something's sideways. Again, you can see that happen here again, with lots of very little candle movements, to the point where it's barely even, like, with low Satoshi coins like this, you could see the actual sort of, it looks like someone just dropped a bunch of twigs on the floor. It's kind of like just sideways, just going up and down. There wasn't like too many crossovers, because it wasn't a long enough sideways. But if you look at the volume bars, you can see once again it's mostly green, right down here. This is, once again proof that it's a form of accumulation sideways and not distribution sideways. If you look at a coin with distribution sideways at the top, for example, let's use ETC, Ethereum Classic. This is the accumulation sideways. It's kind of rough and dangerous, but you always notice. First of all, there's usually a very large green volume candle, which is sort of the exuberance of like the bulls, and then you'll notice usually a very big red candle after that as people start like dumping their bags, and you notice a lot more red than green, right? So take this for example down here, right? Compare that to the Doge coin sideways over here, where you see a lot of green, right? As opposed to that, which was mostly red. This is how you differentiate between sideways accumulation and sideways depreciation. Sideways distribution, sorry. Well, the next thing that then becomes, well, how do you spot an uptrend, right? Well, it's the same thing with how to spot a downtrend. Is when you see, if whichever indicator you want to use, right? And I suggest maximum one or two of them. If it's Ichimoku, you want to see the cloud penetration. If it's Storch RSI, you want to see the moving averages down there sort of crossover. It's kind of the same thing with moving averages. You want to see your shorter time frame moving average crossover your longer time frame moving average. Now, a lot of people, when it comes to moving averages, they use 50 moving average versus a 200-day moving average, or in crypto where things are crazier, people come all the way down to 15 versus 30, which is probably a good sort of safe moving average setting to use in crypto. It's reasonable enough to give you signals, but it's not crazy enough that it's going to be flipping all the time. So, and then obviously some people would prefer to use 15 EMA versus a 30 SMA, or they want to use both EMAs. It's all up to you. You have to find what works best for the market you want to use, and kind of use that to trade going forward. The question then becomes, well, how do you trade these cycles, right? So let's say you're in a sideways accumulation, like, what do you do? It's kind of boring, it's just going sideways, you don't know what to do. Well, as we said with the dump, the best thing is just to short or not, just to short it or exit the market entirely. With sideways accumulation, the best thing to do here, if you're a scalper, is to identify the top and bottom of the channel. So in this case, with Doge, for example, you could say, if you switch to the line chart and turn off your moving averages, you could see where you could say this was the bottom, and this was, sorry, that was the top, and this is the bottom. And you could just flip that same zone back and forth until it breaks out, right? For a little, what is that? That's a 50% gain, right? You could just flip that back and forth until you get tired of it or whatever. But someone like me who likes to hold bags, the much better thing to do would be to just accumulate in that zone and hold it, right? Accumulate and hold your bags and wait for the eventual pump, the eventual breakout of that top, the top of the channel, and that would be what I would do as a long-term sort of bag holder, right? The same thing you could do. You could do down there. You could just it's a very tiny zone, but once again, it's if you're one of those guys with bots and you want to just have the bot sort of market make and provide volume and make a little money while you're at it. That's the accumulation zones are sort of the best places to buy and sell. But I would suggest just accumulate there and hold, right? Then how do you spot an uptrend, right? How do you spot an uptrend and how to hold that uptrend? Once again, if you keep looking at those here, downtrends tend to have their own little channels as well, right? This would be the top of the downtrend channel, right? A nice little tool that I like to use is the parallel channel. And if the chart is too noisy, you can just switch to line chart and draw your parallel channel there. And you can identify with these where the top of the downtrend channel is, right? And when the coin breaks out of that downtrend, either upwards or sideways, okay, the downtrend is probably over, right? And usually, a lot of times, downtrends tend to follow very basic patterns. This would be a bull flag if it didn't just go on forever, and this would be a fallen wedge, right? And it would tell you just very basically, okay, this is not going to go down forever. It's going to break out at some point, and it's going to resume, its uptrend. And that would be the perfect time if you're not looking to sort of buy the accumulation and hold, and you just want to enter an uptrend. You would put an alarm right somewhere. So when you spot this sort of sideways in Doge, for example, and you don't want to buy the accumulation, you just want to buy the uptrend and hold it. You spot that sort of top, the top of that channel there at 41 satoshis, and you put an alert right there. And if you're using Coinigy or TradingView or what else, you could just put an alert there, and it would alert you when the price moves above that, and then you could just jump in and precision FOMO, as News likes to call it. You guys doing fine here in the chat? I don't know. So, well then, how do you know if you buy an uptrend, everything's good? If you bought the accumulation or you bought the breakout, whatever. by the way, BO. I usually just write breakout as BO, and you know, whatever. But you could just, so when you buy the breakout into uptrend, how do you know when to sell, right? How do you know when to sell? So many coins, they seem to just start going up one day, and then, you know, one day they all just start going down, and you have no idea what to do. Again, very basic with the moving averages. Well, first things first, right? All indicators are lagging indicators, right? Well, most of them, not all of them, but most of them are. So they're not going to tell you immediately a downtrend, you know, begins. They're going to tell you after a while, like 2 days or a day, if your settings are really close. Yeah, so with that, you're not gonna catch tops. You're not gonna catch the perfect like top of a coin, right? You're gonna have to you're gonna have to rely on more speculatory sort of behaviors, right? And there are 2 or 3 basic exit strategies. The first one is to use fibs, which I use rarely. The second one is to set arbitrary exit, right? Just set like random exits. You know, I'm gonna exit at a 2x, and then I'm gonna exit at a 10x, and I'm gonna exit at a 100x. It doesn't matter what the fundamentals are. It doesn't matter what's going on in crypto. Whatever, you don't care. And the final one, I should just, well, yeah, the final one is basically the same thing as setting random exits. So we'll just use that. So when it comes to fibs, once again, it's not my favorite. I'm actually sort of internally debating if I should even talk about it, but it's not one of my favorite, you know, things to use when it comes to TA, because it's all kind of like excessively sort of voodoo-ish, you know, for me. It's excessively voodoo-ish for me. But let's say you want to use fibs, right? And fibs work because people just have a natural inclination for certain amounts. You know, everyone likes a 50%. Everyone likes you know, certain just amounts of percentages that just, you know, people just randomly like, because I don't know, it occurs in nature and what have you. That's so you find, you know, a bottom of you know, of the move. In this case would be the bottom of that range at 15 satoshis, and you find the top, and you ask yourself, well, if I was a random, you know, person who's trading crypto and I didn't know what I was doing, where would I set my exits, right? Most people have like just a general, like a random inclination of where they're gonna exit their bags, right? And you know, again, this 50% fib here is, you know, as you can see, that was sort of the top of the recent move. But you know, this could just be, you know, like a random thing that happened. That's what I mean with when it comes to fibs and you know, the sort of voodoo factor. It's all sort of arbitrary and sort of like there's a lot of coincidence people claim to be, basis for, their reasoning. But if you want to do that, that's fine. Again, it kind of fits in the whole like set random arbitrary cells, so when it comes to fibs, you can use fib extension, layers. I mean, again, it's kind of interesting that this, if you use the, the fib, this accumulation zone happens somewhere right above the, basically half of the 50% fib. So it's just a random. It could be a coincidence. It could be magic and voodoo. I don't know, but it works sometimes. So fibs, you can use 50% retracement. You could use a 100% retracement, which in this case would just be a return to all-time highs. Then you have the fib extension. People like the 1.6 extension, which I've added to this chart to show you where that goes. So the 1.6 for Dogecoin in this case would be 160 satoshis. I have a Doge bag. If that actually happens, I'll be excited. So a retracement is different from an extension in the sense that a retracement is between sort of 1 and 100%, or 0 and 100%, and then an extension would be 100% and above, right? So retracement it's going back to where it was. Extension it's going farther than where it was before. So with setting random exits, 2x, to begin with, just to take your money out of the trade, and sort of feeling secure in the knowledge that you're not going to lose money anymore. Then you could just do a 5x, and then a 10x, and then a 50x, and then a 100x, right? Just setting random like arbitrary cells and holding until those cells hit, right? This is a bit more like the secrets strategy. Well, I don't know what secrets uses to exit his bags, but I think he just he's like, okay, this is 10x, I'm gonna sell a little bit here. This is 50x, I'm gonna sell a little bit there, and it's just kind of how he trades. I mean, other things you could use to decide exits. You can use candle patterns, right? Which I haven't talked too much about because it's a bit more complicated, and it's also sort of there's a lot to learn there, right? Both candle patterns and chart patterns, right? As an exit strategy. See, I can't even spell anymore. So yeah, candle patterns and chart patterns. Or with chart patterns, I mean, everyone knows your rising wedges, your let me write these down. Your rising wedges, your head and shoulders, your triple tops and double tops, and you can Google all these patterns, and see what they look like, so you can know how to spot them in the wild. And these are all very basic sort of chart patterns that can allow you to exit or forecast a possible exit point. But one of my favorite little patterns that most people don't really use much would be the candle pattern, right? So candle patterns are a lot like chart patterns, except they are stuck in like a single candle, and with every pattern, right? The strength of the pattern working out is very correlated with the time frame you use, right? So the higher the time frame, the more possible it is. This is a sort of a rule you should keep in your mind. The more possible that it's gonna play out with, what it's gonna do what it's supposed to do. So just a random good example of a candlestick pattern is the tweezer top, right? A tweezer top is basically when two candles, like you see here on Doge, one giant green candle followed by a giant red candle, and they both have the same length of shadow, the same top where the shadow went into. So when you have again, you can Google all these because I don't think I'm gonna be able to go into all these specific patterns in this video, but you can just Google them and just look at them and sort of memorize them, and if you have to download the picture or whatever of the cheat sheet, go ahead, do that. But you have your tweezer tops. I don't even know how to spell tweezer anymore. You have your bearish engulfing or bullish engulfing if it's an uptrend. In a downtrend, it will be a bearish engulfing, which is when the red candle is bigger than the green candle, right? It's another good example of the beginning of a downtrend. There are many other candlestick patterns. You have your dojis, right? So you have multiple types of dojis that are bearish. You have your hanging man, your gravestone doji, and if it's a bullish pattern, you have your morning star, and these are all sort of multiple different types of dojis that sort of that predict the beginning of a bull run or the end of a bull run, depending on which part of the cycle you're in. And once again, I encourage you guys to go look this up on Google and just find out what it is that these different patterns look like, and sort of memorize them, so like when you see them in the wild, you'll be able to recognize them and act accordingly. So yeah, 4 cycles to a trade and how to trade them. This was a bit of an off the cuff video. There wasn't really much preparation done for it. The video was a suggestion by one of the Patreon donators, a guy called UT Cash. I don't really know how to say the name, but yeah, that's what it sounds like, UT Cash. And he suggested the video, and as a Patreon supporter, I'm sort of happy to make the video for him and to make it for everyone else, because everything I do is for free regardless of incentive. So yeah, that's the video. If you guys have anything, any questions you want to put to me, just quickly ask, and after that we'll end the stream. I'm gonna wait for the questions in the chat. You guys are kind of boring today, but I suppose crypto isn't as exciting as it used to be when everyone had the time to jump into random streams and just should post all day. What do you think of using Elliott waves versus other fib-based methods? I think Elliott waves are useful on a sort of basic, like rudimentary sort of way, So if the 1, 2, 3 sort of pump and dump sort of Elliott wave structure is obvious. So once again here on Doge, your 1, your 2, your 3, and then your dump, right? It's the same thing with what happened to Bitcoin. So let's look at Bitcoin. The bulls and bears are struggling over there, right? If you wanted to count, well, there were so many waves here, but you could count like, a lot of pumps and exits tend to follow that sort of basic. I'm looking for a random coin that I can use to show this, but they all have that sort of basic sort of 1, 2, 3 sort of thing. Again, if you, let's say with a bit being here, you can see the first pump, the second pump, and then the last one, and that was it, right? If you skip to, I don't know, burst, let's check out burst. You can also, well, this one's kind of weird, but if you say like this was the breakout, right? That was the first pump, that was the second pump, and that was the last one, and you're dead. I don't know, but that as a sort of basic, sort of random thing that you could just use on a very basic level, I think it's useful. But I think people kind of over exaggerate the use when they start trying to predict the very specific price it's gonna go to and start drawing ginormous like boxes. They don't really you could just guess. You don't really need fibs with all of that to make it work. And Elliott waves are kind of voodoo. Then you put more voodoo with fibs on it, and then now you just have like ridiculous amount of stuff going on. Anyways, yeah, that's the video. If you want to support the I kind of got bored because it's just kind of, I don't know, it's just kind of boring. But if I get more support, if I get like a lot of views on this, if I get people to use my ref links or whatever, I'll do more of them. But after that, there's not much I can say. Thanks for showing up. See you next time.